Two friends meet up to drink some beers and talk about past times. Not yesterday, but long ago, it's scandals, wars and crimes. From Stalin's reign to Prohibition, Tudors, Pompey, Bush and NASA's mission, Edison's bulk, Genghis Khan's rise to victory. Forget your old teacher, it's time for Pint-Sized History.
Hi, I'm Zack.
And I'm Joe.
And welcome to another episode of Pint-Sized History, the podcast where we talk about the landmark events that have happened in the past that have shaped the world we live in today over a couple of refreshing beverages.
That's so true. And this one, we're going the furthest back of any we've done so far. Yeah. Well, think about it. The furthest back up to this point is the Vikings, I think. So this is BC. It's not AD. It's BC. So we're going the furthest back. Yeah, literally before Christ.
Resquitat Pace.
Excuse me?
I think that means rest in peace.
Oh, mate.
Just want to say a bit of Latin. That's the only Latin I know.
You're just showing off with some Latin. Dunked on me with some Latin in the first minute of the pod.
I mean, you speak Italian, so...
I do speak Italian, but
is that close to Latin? I mean, I know it's close, but like...
Yeah.
Can you understand parts of Latin?
If I read it, yeah. If I hear
read
it,
Latin.
No, but if I read Latin, then I'll be like, okay, that must mean this because it's close to Italian.
Yeah.
If it's a basic Latin text, I can probably guess what it is. But I can't. I'm guessing. It's not like I know.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah,
that's sick. Very nice.
Thank you.
You do well in this story. You know, you'd be fine.
Well, I wouldn't because they're not speaking Latin in this.
Oh,
tale.
of course, yeah.
They're speaking Greek.
We'll get on to that. Don't get ahead of ourselves here. As you know, we like to have a few refreshing beverages, like I said. So, Joe, what are you drinking today?
I'm drinking a Budweiser, which no.
That is a really unique drink, I think.
The Budweiser. Well, there's a reason I've picked it, right? And I understand that it might seem like a silly reason, but Budweiser is known as the king of beers, and the king, and one of the people in this story that we're about to talk about is known as the king of kings.
Yes, and
that's why it felt right. And I couldn't find any Greek beers. Well, I'll ask you why in a moment. But firstly, what are you drinking?
Oh, I'm drinking a Star Pramen, which I believe is a Czech beer. So nothing to do with what we're talking about today, which Joe will come on to in a second. But a delicious beer. If you see it on the draft, in the line of drafts at the pub, it is something that always grabs my eye.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the ones I go for as well.
I've also got a Jubel for backup too. Shout out Jubel.
Oh, okay, lovely. Yeah, that's right. We're going to be talking about
Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great. Wow,
what a great guy.
Wow,
very great.
That's debatable.
The greatest.
But you could argue that what his achievements were great, and I think it's quite hard to not argue it, honestly, especially after listen to what I've got in store for you.
Conquered the world at 16.
Whoa, way too young. Jesus.
18?
He was at boarding school at 16.
Boarding school?
He was,
in
yeah.
BC?
Well, what they had, what would be a boarding school in ancient Greece. But, he was being tutored. He was being tutored by a very famous person. Who was that?
Oh, he was tutored by Socrates.
Not Socrates.
No, Plato.
Not Plato.
Archimedes.
Not Archimedes.
I'm on the right track.
It's a Greek philosopher.
Who am I missing? Archimedes, Socrates, Plato... Oh, go on.
Aristotle was his tutor from the ages of 13 to 16. So at the 16 years old, he was still being tutored.
I think Archimedes actually was a mathematician. I could be wrong.
Well, I don't know, and I also don't care. So let's dive in, shall we?
I got savage straight away.
I'm so sorry, but let's dive right in. So the reason that I decided to do Alexander the Great for this week is that many people know the name Alexander the Great. It's a famous name, but many people don't know why. They could assume that he's from Greece because what happened is tied to Greece. No one knows why he's so great, or it's not perceived so much why he is this great man. And in reality, he is considered, and I respected him from afar. I didn't know much about him before I researched this, but I understood that his achievements were outstanding. What I didn't realize is that, to be honest with you, it's probable that he is the greatest general ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus, big shout.
He is. I know.
Erwin Rommel has some words for you.
And Napoleon and Admiral Yi and all these fuckers.
You love Admiral Yi.
Don't worry, we're doing an Admiral Yi.
We're definitely Admiral Yi.
But if he
for our zero Korean fans.
But he is. In my opinion, after doing all this, I can't disagree with it. The story of rags to riches is just frankly unbelievable. So that's why I fancied doing this.
I'm going to debate that later.
You will.
Don't necessarily think it is true, but interesting take nonetheless.
I got to say, firstly, this is ancient Greece we're talking about. So this is the story starts at 500 BC, which is obviously a very long time ago, 2,600 years ago, or 500. I'm an idiot. Yeah. It was obviously a fascinating time, wasn't there? There was architecture, art, plays, democracy were ideas that were really fashioned by the Greeks in Europe at this time. It was
before Rome?
Before Rome, yes, absolutely. And so it was a very interesting classical period, the Greek, how ancient Greece was at this time. It was mostly just a few city-states that were vying for power all the time, like Athens, and Thebes, and Sparta, and they were the main dogs, as it were. However, in the year 500 BC, or around that, they're actually the underdogs, because what's on their doorstep is the biggest empire in the history of the world at this point.
The Persian Empire.
The Persian Empire, also known as the Achaemenian Empire. Achaemenian.
Achaemenian.
Achaemenian. Achaemenian. It was founded in modern-day Iran by
Iran.
By Cyrus the Great in 550 BC. The empire spanned an incredible swath of territory, right? You know, this went from like Pakistan and India to Turkey, I think bits of Bulgaria as well. And then obviously down to like Egypt. So a huge
good food empire.
It was literally the biggest. At this point, there was no empire bigger. This was the biggest anyone had control of land at this point. They were the true kings of this age. And at this point, in 480, or even maybe just a bit before, they had their sights set on Greece.
Really?
Yes, and they got close. So they go through Bulgaria, they go down through Greece. They almost stopped in Thermopylae, at the Battle of Thermopylae, which is...
in the film 300, which we talked about in episode 2, which you might see the clip of us talking about Stalingrad and Goering and Goebbels talking about Thermopylae. It's basically it's like this tight, narrow ridge in somewhere in Greece, like this. I would say Sparta, but the film is probably not accurate.
Yeah,
and it's where the Persian Empire suffered a crushing naval defeat and humiliating land defeat, I think.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, the Thermopylae was basically some Spartans that were able to hold, and some other units as well, not just Spartans, but is known as the Spartan 300. That fought off the Persians for days in this narrow pass, and eventually they are all beaten back or captured or whatever. But that is... that was a very famous moment that is still talked about today. They beat past them and they got all the way to Athens, and that's where they lost that big naval battle you were talking about. And soon after that, another big battle, which basically meant that the Persians had to retreat and give up their conquest of Greece right at the door of Athens. And in fact, they actually burned down the Acropolis, which is funny because we were talking about burning down the White House in 1812, like the Brits doing it. And we were talking about that last episode, and I was thinking, like, this is the Persian version. They're just like, hey, get fucked. We just burned down your Acropolis, you fucking idiots. Greek twats.
Jesus.
Well, that was the Persian mindset.
Cut out, maybe.
I love
Sorry,
this.
Greece.
That's what the Persians said. I didn't say it.
Yeah.
You know,
that's what Cyrus the Great said.
Yeah, if he was alive. I don't know if he was still around by that
It's
point.
a bit like, the Persian Empire is like Manchester City.
Yes.
And and the Greeks like Norwich. But the Greeks did it. Norwich won.
Yeah, that honestly is such a weird reference to try and make it. That doesn't work. I don't think that works.
I don't know why it has to be football related, but
it doesn't.
Interesting tangent, nonetheless. Keep going.
So after some years of peace, the Greek states, of course, started fighting again, and Sparta. They were plunged into some civil wars. You had, I think it lasted for almost a century, where these Greek, Athens, Thebes, Sparta, just fighting each other constantly, and it makes the nation weak because they're all, squabbling amongst themselves, and it sets the stage for this new person to come out of the shadows. Do you know his name?
It's Alexander's father, who is the king of Macedonia.
And what's his name?
I don't know.
His name is Philip II.
Philip.
And Philip. Right, I've just said it. Oh yeah, no.
No, that was fresh in my head. It was right there. You just smudged it around for me.
So yes, Philip was, he basically became king, and he changed everything. Macedonia at this point was known as a kind of the backyard of Greece. They weren't really considered Greeks, really. No one ever thought that a challenge could come from that area because they never really had any facilities to be able to do that.
Big man.
The king of Macedonia was certainly not a big man in their eyes. However, what they didn't expect was Philip II, who had received apparently an extremely well done military and diplomacy education. They did not expect him to have these ingenious ideas of how to make Macedonia the kingdom that it should be. He married off perfectly to create good alliances. He basically, through alliances, was able to control almost all of Greece, with the exception of southern Greece, where Athens and Sparta are. And he developed a very important unit, which would end up being the most critical part of, and I know you're putting a hand up, hold on. It became the most critical part of the Greek army. Now, I know that you know it, or I assume that you know it, but we're not going to talk about it yet. Oh. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Philip II has just taken all of this. He wins some battles in Athens. He beats back these people in Thebes.
Oh, he started warring the Greek cities.
Well, they don't want him to be the king, and he goes, you know what? I'm taking it all.
Okay.
So he's a young man. I'm not sure exactly how old he is, but Alex is only a boy. Alex is just a boy. And he is witnessing his dad pull off these miracles where he's suddenly just taking over bits of Greece until almost all of it is taken. I think it's only Sparta right at the bottom that just holds on and doesn't, just stays. They don't go after it anymore. They just accept that this is the Greece they now have. And he creates this Hellenic League, which is just this alliance, basically, of all the kings of this area, including the city-states of Athens and Thebes and Albania and Macedonia and all this, basically together. But Philip is the ruler. That's the important thing. He is the ruler of this Hellenic League.
Just very quickly, I wonder to what extent that has shaped what Greece and Greeks are like today. Do you think it's incredibly partisan, city to city, state to state, because you had these incredible foundations of power for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, like Sparta, Athens, Thebes. Is Thebes a big power at this point? I don't know, but
yeah.
These huge who some are the highest peak of civilization at the time. Do you reckon that's if any Greek viewers watch this and can get in touch with us and tell us if there is this sort of this I don't know, tribal rivalry still between major cities and powerhouses in Greece? I'd be fascinated to know that.
So would I. I don't know enough to give any really real answer to that. I mean, I really didn't know much about Greek history before I researched this. This is honestly probably my first real foray into this kind of political background of Greece and all the players in it. Most places, let's be honest, most places in the world have a rivalries between cities, even if they're not city-states from thousands of years ago. North-south divides, industrial versus commercial areas always seem to be
Manchester.
Exactly, and well, just the north-south. Margaret Thatcher and the workers in the north versus the south. It's like there's always these divides that are happening in every country. And I imagine, this is a complete guess really, but I imagine that Greece is maybe a more pronounced in history because of the long, detailed history they've had fighting each other. But I'm sure there are many other economical or personal issues that are actually much more shaped the country than what happened 2,000 years ago.
I guess maybe modern day equivalent of that might be the Italians, but they're united by the history of the Roman Empire. But still, you've got big city states like Venice and Milan and Rome and Turin.
Yeah, but Italy has a huge north-south divide, And what I'd say is that sure, that might have been shaped by something that's happened throughout history, but in reality, a lot of that comes down to the last 200 years when Italy became a full kingdom. The country was founded under Garibaldi, and from then on, it was much more about the north getting all the money, all the value, or all of it being pumped there, and all the money that went south was either taken in by corruption or the mafia or just not bothered. They didn't, it was considered, what's the point in investing down there? And it has created a divide, but that's the last 200 years. That's not from the Roman Empire as much. And I imagine that's probably something similar for Greece. But I don't know. So, if there are any Greeks listening, please correct me. But do it nicely, please.
I don't know if we have any Greek viewers, but...
Well, we might have one or two. You never know.
Do it politely, did you say?
Yeah, do it politely.
Come over fucking guy.
These fucking Brits don't have any clue, man.
Of course, those British with their... They got the Elgin marbles. They've still got the Elgin marbles. And they don't know about Greek city-states.
So, Alexander is born 2 years before Philip becomes the king. When Philip becomes the king, he starts planning and having his preparations set out in place. He's smashed it. He's literally taken all of this and now created a kingdom for himself from considered, the backyard, the nothing of this Greek, kingdom of now Macedonia is jumped up. And now he sets his sights on an even bigger power, which is Persia. So what he does is he sends his main general, Parmenion, who is basically who's been, it is cool name, and he's been with him I think since near the beginning, helping him in these battles. And Parmenion goes to the front lines towards the coast and starts preparing to invade Persia. This is in the year 336 BC.
And, he's invading via Turkey. He's not
as in
he's not skipping out the entire South Med.
I don't think we fully know what Philip II was purely planning. Maybe he had really big ambitions, but the point was he wanted. There's some Greek cities, under occupation in their eyes, that are on that Turkish west coast. Yeah. So that's the number one step, right? Is to liberate
Aegean Islands.
Yeah, well, not the islands, but just the coast. They're cities. These are places that the Greeks wanted back, and Philip was starting to plan for it. But oh no, Zach, guess what's happened?
Based on the tone, the fact that anytime anyone dies in Pint-Sized history, we always go, oh no, oh God, and we're like, no, I take it that Philip has died.
Well, what I was going to say was, it's a Greek tragedy. Hey, whoa, like that? Yeah. Very good. Basically, I think it's not the actual wedding, but basically celebrating the wedding of his daughter Cleopatra, Philip is walking into a theatre where his own bodyguard stabs him.
The Red Wedding.
In the ribs. Well, no, in a theatre. So it's not the wedding.
The Red Play.
The Wed Play.
the Wed Play.
So Philip II, this remarkable gentleman, is gone. He's been assassinated, but it's the moment that changes everything. So, now we talk about young Alexander. Alexander was 20 when this happened, 20 years old. He had been at boarding school, where he had been taught by Aristotle. Mm-hmm. At this point, he had gained a few friends that would end up becoming some of his most trusted generals. They were all taught by Aristotle. Okay. Philip had to choose a tutor for his son, and he went through them and thought, that Aristotle guy, he seems pretty good. We'll choose him.
I guess if he's conquered Greece, he has access to the finest scholars known to man, maybe at this time.
Exactly. So
leaders in maths and science, potentially.
Alexander and his chums at boarding school are taught everything. So we're talking medicine, we're talking philosophy, we're talking philosophy, we're talking religion, we're talking art, we're talking history, we're talking morality. Apparently, Alexander becomes a big fan of history, and he becomes a big fan of the Iliad. And Homer's Iliad. So, that's like the story of Troy and Sparta and the Trojan horse and all that. Apparently, Aristotle gives Alexander a annotated copy of Homer's The Iliad that he carries with him throughout his adventures into the Middle East.
Throughout his adventures?
The entire
as if
time.
he's going on a quest.
I mean, it kind of is an adventure, man.
He's got his book.
You're right. It's a
plus one stamina.
It's a conquest, not an adventure. But it's like he literally carries this little book around with him the entire time. That's Aristotle's been teaching him about.
Has he got it signed by Aristotle?
Oh, you'd hope so. If you got your tutor's Aristotle, you want it signed so you can just hey, look at this.
Hey, check this out, ladies. Aristotle's signature.
Aristotle, see that? Yeah, nice.
You probably can't read because it's 500 BC, but it says Aristotle.
I don't know why, but apparently a lot of Persian nobles and basically prisoners of war, I guess, were kept, or exiles were kept in Philip's court in Macedonia and then in the Hellenic League. And I think that's interesting because you'll see throughout the story that Alexander seems to have a lot of understanding, knowledge, and also respect for Persian culture and traditions. And I wonder if that was because he was, exposed to it a lot when they were together at school. I'm not exactly sure.
Probably have nobles in your court, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you have exiles from a land nearby, you'd probably be like semi-royal figures or at least powerful, influential people prior to their exile. So he probably has some brilliant Persian people inside his kingdom.
So, Alexander the Great. Welcome.
Alexander. That's the best you have.
Alexander. It works.
Alexander.
Your father has just been assassinated, sir.
I'm so sad.
You are now the king. What do you do?
I'm going to avenge him. I'm going to... Who is his bodyguard?
I don't know. So it's debated why he did it exactly, the bodyguard, but he was killed by the other bodyguards who found him shortly after and just stabbed him back. So he's dead. There's a lot of Greek plotting and assassinations throughout history. So a lot of it's just assuming that it was a plot in some way, but we don't really know.
Well, I'm going to find who did this and make them pay because I'm Alexander the Great, tutored by Aristotle himself. So I have a brilliant mind, but my emotions get the better of me, and I decide to go on a fucking killing spree. Okay,
well, you were wrong, but that last bit is kind of right. So he because he basically, this is what I thought you would say. He basically executes a bunch of rivals that could stake claim to his kingdom. You know how it is. There's a power vacuum when a big
Kings 3.
Yeah, when a big leader dies, you have to make sure that you're going to be the one that's in charge. So you kill anyone else that might threaten you. The other thing he does is he crushes all the revolts around Greece, because obviously there are revolts from people that think, oh, who's this boy king? We don't want him. These Macedonians are scum. We've dealt with his father, but we don't like these Macedonians. We want to be ruled by Greeks. So he crushes all these revolts very brutally. In fact, he burns down Thebes. He burns down the city. Zach, What were you doing at 20?
I was at university, and I just started getting mental health problems. So
I didn't expect you to say that.
I was kind of figuring out how the brain works to a very scary extent.
I expected you to say that you were at university, and you were also in your first year with your lovely girlfriend, who you're still with.
Second year, just met Carrie. Yep.
So you'd been together for a year at this point with Carrie.
Yeah, about then, yeah.
So you've been together for a year. You're living life. Mental health is now a thing.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Yeah.
But you missed something important.
Still today.
Missed something important. It was the year that you met me properly. But
no, I met a year after.
Well, no, we talked a lot because I was actually living in Australia at the time. But we talked all the time because we were chatting online, playing games and poker
Gamer
and
friends.
Shit. Yeah, but when I came back to the UK, that's when we became close friends. No?
Yeah, I guess maybe the podcast don't really know how we met yet, and maybe we should say that very briefly. But
well,
it's
kind of random how we met because it's like
we're friends with the same people, but we didn't know each other through those people. And then we played Rocket League online while he was in Australia, and I was studying uni, but like doing no work and staying up to 8 a.m. every day, just playing like Rocket League with you.
It was actually when you were turning 21. So you are 20 at this point. When you were turning 21 was when we met properly face to face and became very close, and we are still to this day. But that's what you were doing. You were fucking about, pissing about, doing nothing, doing niche, right? Alexander's making moves. Alexander's making moves out there, man. Now that he's killed his rivals to the throne, and now that he's prepared and he's beaten back all these revolts, it's time for his big plan. And this is important because, when you're 20, and we've both been 20, you sometimes don't think, you don't try to reach your full potential. You don't necessarily, you maybe piss about, you drink a lot, you do whatever you want, but you don't, a lot of us...
4 a.m. in the gym.
No, you're just not, though.
Eating 10 eggs.
I think what makes the story quite inspiring in many ways is that this is clearly a bloke that just goes fucking ham. He's like, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go 100% all the way. And one of the things that makes Alexander so outstanding is that all of what he builds is purely around him. It's his personality, his aura, his strength that makes people respect who he is and what he's going to achieve. And it's kind of that rugged determination and discipline that makes him into this unbeatable figure that we're going to learn about throughout this podcast. So I think it's really interesting to see just all these little decisions he makes. It's like there's never any... The number one thing when I was understanding what he did in his battles and his decision making is always on intuition. And you'll see when I talk about some of these battles, because we are going to talk about some battles, that a lot of it just comes down to quick fire thinking, doing whatever you need to do to make the right choice. But it's like he was meant to do this. I can understand why maybe he had a bit of an ego by the end of his time, because let's face it, if you're doing this and you're getting it all right, how could you not? It's like he like most people, like Napoleon or Hitler or whoever, always believe that they are descendant from God, that they are the Messiah, as it were, because no one can stop them. And when you listen to some of the stuff that Alexander does, you go like, fucking hell, I mean, I couldn't have done that. And no one could have done that. That's why it was him, and him specifically, that makes him the great.
The thought I had, which was maybe slightly controversial and definitely disagrees with you, is that his generals made him. Not that I've done like hardly any research, but I know
that's your perception.
Like Napoleon's marshals made him. Alexander did the same, because Napoleon
look, everything has to come together. This is like lightning in a bottle when these Napoleonic campaigns type things happen. Everything has to happen perfectly. You need everyone in the right position doing the right thing all the time for this continued success. So yes, his generals were fantastic, and we will talk about them as well. But those generals aren't doing it with an inept commander. They're not doing it with a good commander. They're doing it with... And, historians don't say he's arguably the best ever if he's not arguably the best ever. Alexander is something special, especially considering almost every... history is history. So when it happens, that means that the person ahead can now read it or learn about it and use it for themselves. And Hitler would have watched Napoleon. Napoleon would have learnt stuff from medieval crusaders and Alexander. And you learn these things from the previous. Alexander had no one to learn from. Sure, he got taught by Aristotle, but apart from the Iliad and the battles of Troy and the battles of Greece, he does not have that much information to go on. It's not like he's got, we can't do that because of the rain. It's not that much for him to know. So it is truly groundbreaking what he did. That's what I'd say. In 336 BC, he is now 21 years old. It's less than 2 years after he's taken the throne. And he's now taken the preparations made by his late father and Parmenion, and he leads his army into modern-day Turkey. That is a lot of backstory that we have gone on before the campaign. Now we're starting the campaign. So I would like to talk to you, Zach, about how the Macedonian army worked and what made it so powerful. By the time Alexander invades Persia, his army is around 40,000 men strong. His main general, Parmenion, which is the same one that fought for his dad, controls the bulk of the infantry. Parmenion's sons, Philotas and Nicanor, it's hard to say these names, also controlled specialist units within his army. Now, do you know what a sarissa is?
I don't know. I'm going to take a guess that it is a type of light Greek cavalry.
It's not,
No.
But I tell you what, you do know it, because it's actually the weapon that you know
Oh,
about.
yes, the 15-foot-long pike.
So, what do you know that this is the reason why Philip was able to beat all these Greek forces as a small, lowly king of Macedonia? What was the weapon and what was the unit that made it all happen?
Well, we talked about this, about the Cuban Missile Crisis, about the advancement of technology, and I said that the Macedonians, under Alexander and Philip, developed this pike, which is basically like a super long pike. And the units that wielded them are called hoplites, and they form together what is called a phalanx. And that's like the tight-knit units of infantry that go under like turtle formations. But this sarissa was like, just a longer pike than anything they had at the time. They thought, you know what, we'll add a few more feet onto it, and it works.
Yeah, kind of right. So hoplites are actually something else. Hoplites are just the more basic, renowned Greek infantry unit. It's just, they've got a shield, they've got a shorter spear.
Yeah.
They are the main force, and I think they make up, let's just quickly check, I believe that the hoplites are made 15,000 of his 40,000. So almost half of his army are the hoplites.
They're like the trained units, right? Hoplites
yeah, they're all trained. Hoplites, imagine, are literally like the classic, Greek infantry. It's like, when you imagine the Greeks with their kind of their armor, and they've got a spear and they've got a round shield, that is the hoplite. That's what you're imagining, really. The sarissa is indeed the extremely long spear that you're talking about. Now, a sarissa is actually 18 feet long, so 6 meters long. Now, for context, that's about the same size as an adult giraffe in terms of height. So imagine an adult giraffe. I mean, you can't easily because we're not in Africa, but
it's like when we had to imagine 72,000 tons last episode.
But it's a giraffe.
I can't imagine a giraffe.
If you're holding a sarissa in your hand, that is a giraffe length. Like literally, that's how long it is. And
is it quite light?
I imagine it's quite heavy, to be honest. I mean, it's not like they can carry a shield alongside like the hoplite.
Oh,
That is their weapon.
Just the pike.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
mate, if you're holding something that long, you can't just hold it in one hand. You've got to hold it with both. So the way that the phalanx would work, and this was the key to Philip and then Alexander's army at the beginning, was that they were big formations. I believe the phalangites made up 9,000, and they were in these tight formations of all in the same unit. And they were incredibly difficult to deal with if they went forward. How do you do, especially if you're cavalry, but any unit, how do you deal with that if there's a long spear with no one near it coming towards you? You can't.
Archery. Right?
Well, hold on. Yes, but the con is that, but you could get someone in between to hold up a shield or whatever. There's ways around it. The con with it is that they are not very maneuverable at all. They can't move from left to right particularly easily. No. And they are obviously from the sides and the rear, they're screwed. Like if someone tries to attack from the flank, how are they going to turn quickly enough to be able to deal with it? They are extremely vulnerable in that sense. So, how does he deal with that? Well, Parmenion controls the majority of the infantry. Then his sons control specialist cavalry units. So the cavalry is then the next part of it, right?
Are they called like the sister somethings or like something sisters?
You're kind of close. Before we get on to the cavalry, on one side he has his archers. Now he has, I believe, around 10,000 or just under 10,000 archers and javelin throwers, which is so Greek. It's hilarious. It's like, you got the shield.
The
Olympics, javelin throws, just chuck them
Many
over.
Future Olympic gold medalists in that army.
Yeah. And apparently the year that, the month that Alexander was born, Philip II's racehorse won in the Greek Olympics, the ancient Greek Olympics that same. So it's like,
well done, Philip.
It's like a perfect.
We'll let you cook.
It's like, this is a prophecy. So that's
it's a gold medal son.
So that's his archers, and then he's got his cavalry units. Now, this is the really special part. He's got about 6,000 cavalry units on either side. One part that most of them are called the companion cavalry, which is what you're referring to. The companion cavalry are this high shock, high value, very well trained set of units, including the Royal Squadron, which is commanded specifically by Alexander. But I believe it's Philotas that controls the companion cavalry themselves. So basically, Parmenian's sons and himself control the bulk of Alexander's. It's like the family business alongside Alexander at the helm. Now that we know all that, now that we know that we've got archers on one side, we've got certain cavalry on the same side as the archers, we've got the main phalanx with some hoplite in between, and we've also got the companion cavalry on the other side of that. That is the bulk, and including maybe a few messenger horses, like scouts and stuff. It's a detailed and well organized army, and that's really important.
It's pretty like faultless, I guess, because you've got like you address like the main concerns with the phalanx, which is its lack of maneuverability with two sides of companion cavalry. They got the archers and the medium hoplites as well for like closer range encounters. Like it's just like it's an army that is well suited to whatever challenges a Persian Empire can throw. Which I know I don't want to spoil, but one of them is elephants.
Yeah, it is. You have spoiled that. Yeah, I was looking forward to saying that.
Oh.
So.
Yikes.
Right, now that we understand the makeup of the army and how it's situated, are you ready for the first conflict?
Yeah, absolutely.
Alexander, welcome.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you
Don't
for...
call you
sir. Well, maybe I'm Parmenian, in which case, sir, fair.
Brother.
Fair. Well, no, I was your dad's friend, so treat me like an
uncle.
Elder. Yeah, that'll do. So, listen, we've done well. We've got all our troops across. We are in Turkey. However, well, they don't call it Turkey, but we're in that area. The Persians have arrived, and they are meeting us across the river Granicus. We are on one side and the Persians are on the other. The river itself is shallow, but it's very wide. You can see their army. I think from my eyes, it looks maybe around 10,000 Persian cavalry in front of you, with mercenaries behind them.
You can never trust a mercenary.
No, you can't. They're Greek as well.
Oh, really? Oh, fantastic.
But, they're mercenaries.
Let's appeal to their senses.
So, but they're behind them. And funnily enough, that's probably one of the reasons why, is that the Persian nobles that were leading this battle were maybe like, should we trust the start of the battle with Greek mercenaries, or will they turn on us? So they left them behind. It's hard to tell how many Persians there are here. They've got the cavalry, mostly cavalry, and then they've got some infantry and archers and stuff, whatever. It looks like a fairly even battle in terms of numbers, but I would probably say that we have a bit less than they do. What do we do?
I'm going to take it about head on. I don't trust the training of the Persian troops. I think you can never trust mercenaries when I know we have a well-drilled, well-thought-out formation, and I say we absolutely wipe the floor with them. I think as soon as they bash into our centre, their lines will break.
So you want them to come to us, or are you running across the ford?
No, I'll go fuck them.
You're going to run across the ford. You're going to go straight through the river.
I'm going to go across the river.
Yep.
Gung ho, let's go.
Yep.
General pattern, pushing through Europe. Okay. Let's go.
Wow. I've got written here wrong because I assumed you wouldn't do that, but you're absolutely right. So Alexander works on pure instinct. There's no deliberating. So while his generals say to him, we should wait, even if we do advance, we should wait until the sky's clearer, or the river is more calm, or just until dawn, or whatever it is. He ignores it.
Disorganized.
He ignores it. He sends his cavalry and archers forward straight away, and they're like, oh shit, here they come. They go across the right flank and cross the river, and the Persians just about respond. After this, he sends his companion cavalry, along with himself, along with thousands of infantry, across the river. So while all these units cross the river, especially the first wave, which is the right flank, it's met with a hail of arrows. This is they're in the they're being bogged down in the river. They're trying to get across, and they're just being shot down. Right.
These are Alexander's men.
These are Alexander's men on the right flank. And when they finally cross the river, which you can imagine for the horses especially, and for the men, is quite exhausting because you're crossing a river, they are attacked head on, and they are trying to be pushed back. Alexander is right in the thick of the fighting. This is not someone that leads from the back. He is literally one of the first men that's fighting, and that's part of
mark of a great leader, though.
Well, it's also a mark of why his troops would feel so inspired to fight for him. Yeah, it's like why wouldn't you trust in this leader when they're going head on?
The king is among you.
And
Fight
so,
for your life.
let me tell you, this fight just on the other side of the river is bloody and it's dramatic. And in the thick of it, Alex is in suddenly huge danger. Alexander is hit by 2 Persian nobles who are brothers. The first one bangs him on the head, but the helmet blocks it, and Alexander stabs him while he's, getting his arm back after hitting him on the head. While he's doing this, the second brother now has an opportunity to kill Alexander the Great. So he takes his sword and he goes to hit him, and he literally is in the motion of killing Alexander the Great when his friend and other general Clitus, who we talked about in the Prohibition episode as the man that later on in his life would be killed.
Guy. Yeah, I was wondering
Clitus cuts off his arm.
Really?
So the Persian brother, noble, that's about to kill Alexander, has his arm cut off before he can hit, and then he's dead. Soon he's dead as well.
Wow.
So that's how close history was to being changed in that moment. Clitus, it was known at the time as Clitus the Black. And when I searched it up, I was thinking, why is he called Clitus the Black? And it's because he did. It was there's no reason. It was just so that he wasn't confused with Clitus the White, who had been named by Alexander earlier. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? This is such a random thing.
Those silly Greeks.
Yeah, what are they like? Anyway. Yes.
Greeks are not silly. I'll take that back.
I mean, that was silly, though. I don't know why. Anyway, but regardless, Clitus sees that motion, kills him, and Alexander is saved. While they distract and engage the enemy on the right with this huge cavalry charge and the archers and some of the hoplites, the phalanx are now steadily making their way with no one fighting them.
Oh, jeez.
So they are now across.
Oh, no. Do they make a noise? I feel like they make like a who.
Yeah,
who,
I mean they're very like you know what I mean. Like they seem like that kind of unit you'd be scared of, because what happens? Imagine
you would be absolutely terrified seeing that come to. Like, there's no way I've got to stand here. Like, if I run, I'll get killed by my. If I desert, I'll get killed. I have to stay here and fight this, and I'm not going to win. This is just certain death, coming towards me.
Yeah, mate, you're completely right. Imagine that the right flank is where Alexander's attacked. He's got his cavalry there. He's got some infantry, the archers. It's a full-on battle, and suddenly, as a Persian, you now see on your side 9,000 phalanx soldiers with this long spear as long as a giraffe that's starting to head towards you.
Are they quick?
And it's like, no, they're not quick, but no one's been dealing with them. No one's been fighting them. So once they start coming in, what do the Persians do? They're not encircled, but they're about to be they're being attacked from another strait. And in that moment, they flee because the coordination is completely gone. They have no idea how to deal with this. They've never seen a flat phalanx, most likely. Like, this is a new type of warfare, and they freak out and they run away.
That's a very common thing in history, especially I think in maybe all of history, is that the poorer, worse maintained force will generally run at the first sight of trouble. And that's what makes a coordinated, organised group much better, because they're committed and they're determined. Like, even in World War II, I would say, maybe British or American forces pushing Italian units, they probably found it very easy to do so because they were organised and committed and determined, knew their training, stuck to it well, pushed objectives, didn't hide down in cover rather than make some ground. Whereas the groups with less morale, like may happen in the Eastern Front, just ran away as soon as the Russians advanced. So it's like a common occurrence. Like, battles typically don't go on for that long. Like, the pitched battles end quickly because one side retreats immediately.
That's the main thing, especially in medieval times. Like, most of the casualties do not come during the fighting itself, but rather from
the rout.
Once the retreating army retreats, once they lose their organisation, then the army that is winning the battle then go forward and slice them as they're running away. Yeah. And that is where the majority of the casualties come. That's really the turning point of any battle. And I don't actually know how poorly organised the Persians are. They're probably actually fairly well organised. This is a big empire that's dealing with a dangerous threat.
Though, can a vast empire in 500 BC be, though?
Well, and you'll learn about that later. But you could say that, but you could also, the Greeks are their own empire. Obviously, they're not as...
it's not comprising of India and basically the entire Middle East, though, is it?
I don't know. I don't know how. Look, when you hear this, you'll probably think that they're all incompetent because, they don't stand a chance. Yeah. But I'd argue that that's actually just more to the brilliance of Alexander and his generals rather than the disorganization of their own units.
Also, it's a very Hollywood idea that the Persian Empire was probably disorganized because 300 showed them as this ragtag group of just like.
That's what I mean. I don't think it's fair to. I don't know for this specific group, this battle, but in general, I think it's maybe a bit unfair to say that they weren't up and at them, ready, organised, knowing what they're doing. I just think that they just weren't expecting it. I mean, this is... remember, they're dealing... Well, the mercenaries they didn't have time to get involved. They were away from the other units. And Alexander, and this is why I think you should really be commending Alexander rather than, slagging off the others, is because he was quick. He did this in the blink of an eye. He decided, let's push straight away. And by the time the Greek mercenaries arrive, the army's retreating. The cavalry are running away. And the mercenaries apparently were not spared. Alexander killed pretty much every single one of them. They asked for mercy and he just killed them all, basically.
They are Greeks, though. You could use them.
Yeah, but I think maybe he just felt like, you know what, you just tried to fight your own people. Fuck you.
Also surplus to requirements.
It was a bloodlust, So he takes it. And just like that, he's won his first decisive victory. Now he can advance into modern-day Turkey. He takes cities, some without fighting whatsoever, and he tours the country, basically going down the ports, going across it, taking all the big castles. In Gordium, which is a city... Gordium, which is a city in central Turkey, Alexander is presented with the Gordian knot, a legendary knot, very complex.
It's a very tight knot.
Very tight knot.
well pulled.
The prophecy, they say, states that whoever can unpick it will rule over all Asia.
He doesn't unpick it.
So what does Alexander do?
He unpicks it.
He takes his sword and he whacks it. Cuts in half.
The earliest iteration of a Chad is Alexander the Great.
It's like this 21-year-old who's just like,
who cares about this?
My boy, if you can unpick this knot, you will control the
I'll
world.
Unpick it, all
he's
right.
like, okay, sweet. Dosh. Just whacks his sword into it. That's the kind of person Alexander was.
It kind of like lets you into his thinking, right? It's like it's innovative. It's kind of like genius in a way. Like everyone for hundreds and thousands of years, like, oh, gotta use my fingers and peel it out. He's like, slash it away.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
No
I
one
think...
probably had that thought before him.
No, of course not. That's why it's there. This is the young person that is just like, you know what, I don't care about these traditions. I'm just going to do it my own way. Thinking outside the box, all those kind of metrics. That's the type of person that he is. And you can see it. In these stories, you can see who the type of person he is. So he does that. He continues to go through Turkey. He now heads through the southeastern coast, where he plans to advance his army through the Nur Mountains, which is basically the border between modern-day Syria and Turkey. Okay. So he goes to the coast. He literally turns the corner of the coast.
He's basically past the Med.
He's at the corner of the Med, where the mountains start. And as he's about to approach through the mountains, that's when shit really hits the fan. Soon, Alexander will be faced with an army twice the size of his own, cut off from his own lands and his own people, and facing the king of Persia himself.
Is it a king or an emperor?
And that's where we're going to end episode 1.
Oh,
so
no
this
way.
is going to be a 2-parter, and I thought about it, and it's like, this is a good story. We don't want to cut too much from it, so I thought, let's try and cut this off into 2. And so we're going to do the second part in the next episode. But for this one, we're going to end it there. I'll quickly answer your question. He is known as the king. In fact, and the reason why I took the Budweiser is that he is known as the King of Kings.
Oh, it wasn't Alexander.
Well,
the
king...
You tricked me.
the
How
king,
could you?
The king of Persia is known as the King of Kings because all the places around are, the king of Syria, the king of, I don't actually know. I can't remember what the ancient kingdoms were called. But basically, they were all kings. But then he is the King of Kings. He is which it technically is an emperor.
What's his name?
But his name is the King of
Cyrus.
Kings. His name, you'll find out next episode. Right.
Thank you very much for watching. See you next week.
Cheers. Bye-bye.